Good morning. Today we will conclude our series in the Gospel of Mark. But just because we're concluding Mark today, that does not mean these online devotionals have ended. Rather, this upcoming Monday, March 1st, we're going to begin a new online devotional series as we work through the book of James. So we're going to continue in the pattern that we've been in for the last several months. We will post a short devotional on James every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. And working through James is going to take us through the end of March, all the way until Good Friday and Easter Sunday. So we hope that you'll continue to join us as we work through another wonderful biblical book. But for today, we have to bring the Gospel of Mark to its conclusion. Hopefully you had an opportunity to watch the videos on Monday and Wednesday. Andrew and John did a wonderful job summarizing the two major themes of the Gospel of Mark. Who is Jesus, and what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? Today, we want to conclude the Gospel of Mark itself by looking at the final 8 verses. Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. It begins this way. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they may go to anoint Jesus' body. You know, most scholars conclude that the Gospel of Mark is actually Peter's memoirs, the Apostle Peter's memoirs. And this is interesting because if that's true, then Peter was very honest about himself and the other disciples. Because the Gospel of Mark, even more so than the other Gospels, portray their confusion, portray their doubts, portray the disciples' challenges of who Jesus is and what it means to follow him. Throughout this gospel, they're slow to understand, slow to accept, and slow to obey. And it's fascinating to think that Peter would be writing this about himself, or that he would be telling Mark about himself in this way to be written down. Well, throughout the Gospels, even though the disciples are regularly portrayed as bumbling fools sometimes, the most faithful disciples of Jesus Christ are a group of women. Women who follow Jesus, women who are committed to Jesus, women who, according to the Gospel of Luke, even support Jesus in his ministry. And we encounter several of them here at the beginning of Mark chapter 16. But here we realize that even these faithful and committed women don't fully understand Jesus yet. Because notice what they've gone to do. They've gone to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body. Think about the implications of that. They go to the tomb fully expecting to see Jesus' dead body. In other words, they have failed to fully understand and appreciate what Jesus has said about his death and its subsequent resurrection. They had not fully embraced the reality of the resurrection at this point, despite the fact that Jesus had repeatedly told all of his disciples that he was to be crucified, that he was to be killed, that he was to be buried, but that he would rise again on the third day. Well, verse 2 reads, very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise. It seems that Mark, in writing his gospel, is giving us more than time stamps here. It's more than just the fact that it's the first day of the week. It's more than just the fact that it's the sunrise, but it is in what those symbolize, in what they represent. This is a new day. This is a new week. A new era is about to begin, and it is about to begin right now. But the women don't realize that because they fully expect to see Jesus' dead body. So they approach the tomb wondering who will roll the stone away. And when they approach the tomb, they see that the stone has already been rolled away. And when they look up, they encounter a young man. And they encounter a young man who begins to engage them. Don't be alarmed, he says. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. That's exactly what they were looking for. They were looking for Jesus who was crucified. But here, this young man is going to challenge them and say, you shouldn't have been looking for Jesus the crucified. You should have come looking for Jesus the resurrected. And that's what he says. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. And then he offers evidence. See the place where they laid him? But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Here is perhaps a slight rebuke from the young man, saying, remember what Jesus said. Remember how he predicted his death, his burial, and his victorious resurrection. Now you have the opportunity to see the resurrected Lord, just as he told you that you would. And then comes the conclusion. Well, before we get there, that phrase, just as he told you, the fact that the tomb is empty, the fact that Jesus' body is not there, is a vindication of Jesus and all of his words. It is proof that Jesus was right. It is proof that what Jesus said would happen has in fact happened. Jesus has been vindicated. He said he would be crucified, he was. But he said the crucifixion and his death would not have final say, but that he would be resurrected. He would rise again, and he has. Now comes the final verse of the Gospel of Mark and the final challenge. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. It's an odd ending, isn't it? It's an ending that really doesn't seem to have complete closure. Here the women came to the tomb expecting to see the crucified Jesus, but in fact they encountered an empty tomb and were encouraged to go and find the resurrected Jesus. The Gospel of Mark doesn't tell us what these women choose to do. We learn from the other Gospels what they choose to do, but Mark leaves it intentionally vague. And Mark leaves it intentionally vague for a reason, because he's offering us the same challenge. Go, find the resurrected Lord, and follow him. And the Gospel of Mark doesn't reveal the decision that the women have made. And it's almost as if Mark is asking us the same question. What will you do now? The tomb is empty. Jesus has been vindicated. Jesus has risen. Now the ball is in your court. How are you going to respond to that? Are you going to seek Jesus? Are you going to run to Jesus and obey him? Or are you just going to ignore this remarkable reality? Jesus has risen. How are you going to respond to that? The ball is in your court.